I have come from a family of police officers. My father was a police officer, detective in the old West Midlands Police, and when he first started, he used to work at Thornhill Road, and used to take me and my brother to Thornhill Road Police Station when he was like the duty officer on a bank holiday weekend. So some of my first and fondest memories are of blistering hot, sunny bank holidays in which my father would be the duty officer and would only be popping into the station for a few minutes, and several hours later would always be there. So let's just say that I spent a lot of time at police stations, even as a young child. But it was always in the family blood. I was always fascinated to hear him talk about it. I've got other family members who were officers as well. And when I went to university, I studied law. I studied law and criminology. And whilst I was there, it became apparent to me that I didn't want to just join a law firm. I wanted to be something that was part of a bigger whole, something that was more of a vocation. And the police force to me seemed that vocation. Do we all start out in an idealistic sense? Possibly. Do we all think that it's going to be, oh, yeah, there's all good will always prevail, that everything will come right, that justice is seen to be done, and that everything will, good will come right. And it doesn't work like that. And even though I was never that, I don't think I was ever that naive and idealistic. Policing has become pointless. It's pointless because nothing happens. The people carry on committing crime. Uh, Governments talk about identifying this problem or that problem, addressing this issue or that issue, and nothing ever changes, and it just gets worse. And it's become harder to do the job, it's become less rewarding to do the job, and it feels more pointless doing the job. And that's something that personally I've felt has sapped my energy, sapped my will to do the job, and I just don't want to do it anymore, which is why I've decided not to. Um, we talk about crises in policing, whether it's the constant demands of bureaucracy, which has only ever got worse. I've never ever seen anything ever make the job easier to do from a bureaucratic point of view. It's only ever made it harder. Not a single initiative, I think, has ever helped actually reduce the sheer amount of bureaucracy and time form filling and will sapping bureaucracy that the job entails. I used to, I mean, when I first joined, I used to be able to deal with two prisoners a day. I'd get them arrested, interviewed, and do remand file two of them. And now it takes 18 months to do a file to get someone from arrest to charge. It's ludicrous. It's become so. It's like wading through treacle. It's become such a bureaucratic nightmare. You just think to yourself, what is the point? I just can't be bothered anymore. It just seems like the most hard. It seems like the hardest thing to do. If any criminal would ever be given a punishment that would fit the crime, it would be for them to have to fill in their own paperwork. It would be for them to have to actually complete the endless rounds and reams of form filling and report making and authority seeking that needs to be done to process the most simplest of crimes. And that is what people spend their time doing, and that is what you feel like you're fighting against the very system you're meant to be trying to serve. And that to me is, it just feels like a waste of time. And even if someone is charged and they are convicted, I mean, and I say are convicted because obviously we know the backlogs in the courts. When they do get to court, we're told that everything is so backed up and that the system is so overloaded and overwhelmed that, you know what, we may as well just forget about it. Won't bother prosecuting because it's no longer in the public interest given the amount of time that's passed. Or if people are prosecuted and convicted, there's absolutely no space for them to go into jail or prison because they're too full. So we either won't bother or we'll let people out early. Now I know there's a fair there's a school of thought out there which says, "Oh, prison doesn't work," and and that's probably very true. Does it rehabilitate? Possibly not, but it gives everybody else a break as well. It gives the victims of crime a feeling that justice is being done. To then have justice denied by basically saying that people aren't going to be prosecuted or aren't going to face any punishment for their crime feels again pointless. So it just feels like there is no it feels like there is no sense in carrying it forward. All officers end up getting knee trouble and joint trouble, I've noticed. Either that's the constant, the walking from. I mean, the amount of steps I must have walked up going up the tower blocks in Nechells over the years. I couldn't begin to count the numbers of steps I must have done up there. The it, Doing things like night shifts and working late and snatching what food can be got is usually the wrong food at the wrong times. It does have impacts upon you. It does have detrimental effects on health. Um, Being sleep deprived. I mean, having worked many murder incident rooms over the years where you work. You might work an 18-hour day. You're sent home literally to grab 5 hours sleep if you can, and then back in again. I mean, these are arguably what people say, well, this is what you signed up for, and that again, there's probably a kernel of truth in there as well. But it does have an effect. Lack of decent rest, lack of decent nourishment. Um, you do see things. Of course, you pick up things. You see things over the course of the years which stay with you. Um, I recall listening to a 999 call um, some years ago of a domestic murder in Birmingham, and listening to the woman. She was being actually killed on the other end of the line by her estranged husband at the time, and you could hear her screaming. And I was listening to the 999 call of that, and that still stays with me. I still hear those cries occasionally. So these things do stay with you, and they can't just be forgotten about, and they can't just be blotted out. They do leave an indelible mark on people's mental health, no matter how robust you may think it may be.
Do you think there's enough support from the higher ups and the job itself to meet those psychological demands?
No, definitely not. Um, the const it, the constant erosion of people's mental health is something that's I think is recognised now, but still nothing's done about it because it's too problematic. Um, they have the forces will put in place things like Be Well. It was an initiative that was in West Midlands where um, you could phone up and speak to cat people over the phone and that sort of thing. But you can only do that once or twice, and you didn't have that sense of uh, sustained care. You could access it once, twice, three times perhaps, but there was nothing prolonged. There was nothing that would give a person that sense of continuity, that their mental health was being nurtured and protected on a long-term basis. You could access it if something traumatic happened to you contemporaneously, but nothing that would sort of look after your mental health and over a long period of time. And many things happen to people over a long period of time. There might be instances where something traumatic happens, but it's usually the long-term exposure to constant pressure, constant tension, constant erosion of people's feelings of well-being that has that accumulative effect on the psychological well-being of people, and there's nothing that tackles this in a long-term preventative basis. They talk about people talking to each other. There's the Oscar Kilo program, which you're aware of, but these are things which most people don't access or think about accessing until it's too late. And it's usually when it's too late that you look to try and access these programs. Um, there is a lot of pressure on people to meet various deadlines and you're dealing with some of the most problematic situations with parties who are usually at odds with each other, and the officer is caught in the middle with multiple parties pulling them in different directions, and that does take a toll, and it's a cumulative toll. And the forces across the country don't know how to deal with the cumulative effect of stress and pressure on officers. They're good at trying to sort of mention it when something instant happens, when something major happens, but they can't deal with it in a sustained and continuous manner. Well, it's quite telling when the messages you get from people, friends who are outside the job, first of all, is, I hope you've had some decent rest over the last day or two. That's the first thing they usually say. I usually get messages from friends saying that. It's like, so I don't know what the perception must be that we don't get much in the way of sleep or rest or time off. So people's relationships suffer. It's telling. I always think all you've got to do is look at the pages of the Police Federation magazine. What are some of the biggest adverts you see in there? Usually for divorce lawyers. So what that in itself may tell you what the sort of cumulative effects of the job has on people's personal relationships. Um, it's difficult to leave things at the door. You can't always leave the tensions and the worries and the pressures at the door, and this does leak into personal relationships, and particularly with people, if you're married or in a relationship with someone who's not in the job, it makes it difficult to express it and to find that sort of sense of empathy. Um, Having to explain to people why you're not home, having to explain why you can't make uh, gatherings, why you can't make dates, why you can't make family events, why you can't make, any plans because plans have changed, or you can't get time off. There's a leave embargo here. There's some things happened there. I have to stay over late. Well, can't you just go? And you have to explain to them, no, I can't just go. You can't just walk out. Um, these are things which, again, they have a cumulative toll as well. And again, people will say, well, you knew about that when you joined. And yes, you may, as the officer, but not necessarily everyone else in your life signed up for it. And that's something that they have to get used to, and it's not always easy for them. Definitely not. People will say, well, it's above average. And, in a pure numbers sense, that might be true. But it's above average if all you did was work 40 hours, a standard 40-hour week. And let's face it, no officers work a standard 40-hour week for the very simple fact that you're never really off duty. Yes, you might not be in the station. Yes, you might not be wearing a uniform. That doesn't mean you ever stop looking at things. It doesn't mean you never stop noticing things. You never stop being asked about things by every single person who knows you, who knows what you do, and you're constantly being asked for advice. Doesn't stop you having to deal with things and having to deal with incidents if you see them. Um, in my experience, I've dealt with a number of incidents when I've been off duty, simply because I have to, because you're there, because you're seeing it, and you can't just simply ignore the facts that someone is being attacked in front of you, or people are passing drugs around on a train when you're travelling on it, or something of that sort. So in that respect, you're constantly on duty. So you're working way beyond the 40 hours. It's almost like you're constantly on duty. So in that respect, it's probably not reflective of it. Plus the pressure, plus the tension of having to deal with things, and the fact that it's constantly going around your mind. The fact that you might be any decision you make may lead not only to perhaps an unsuccessful legal outcome, but it could lead potentially to you being the centre of an investigation, you being held responsible for things, you being held perhaps criminally responsible for actions or non-actions, depending on what happens. These are constant fears, constant pressures on people. The fact that any any number of decisions you may or may not make can have such huge ramifications is a constant pressure, and that in itself is a factor, and that in itself would lead me to say that that sort of responsibility and um, that sort of pressure on people is not reflected in the pay at all. It never ceases to surprise me just how the issue of Christmas always seems to shock and surprise a police force. They tumble into the fact that on the 25th of December, some sections of their employees or their workforce may wish to be with their families. Um, Last year, we were asked to put in our preferred leave dates over the festive period. And I did that, as always. And after a week or two, it came back that I'd been given 1 day off over the festive period, excluding the bank holidays. And I hadn't put in for much. I'd put in for, I think, possibly Christmas Eve or the day before Christmas Eve through to about maybe the 1st or 2nd of January. And it had been refused, and I was instructed, I was informed that I had 1 day in that whole Christmas period in which I was being given leave outside, like I say, outside of the actual statutory bank holidays. And this, given the fact that I was due to have my two children over the Christmas period, I'll be travelling now to see my elderly parents who live in another part of the UK. I was livid. I was absolutely livid at the time, and that's what spurred me into saying, I've had enough of this. The job has basically, it can't even give me a few days off at a time when I need to see my family. That's it. Nobody else would have to deal with this. Other jobs would not have to deal with this. I don't need this anymore. I'm going. And that was for me the straw which broke the camel's back. I decided to leave, and I spent the last 12 months actively looking for other employment to go to. And you know what? I have. I've looked at other employment. I've been offered other position, and I've taken it. I'm taking my skills, I'm taking my experience, and I'm taking it elsewhere to what can only be described as a place where hopefully they'll be valued a little bit more. One of the main aspects of policing is the dependence on overtime. The job depends on overtime, and to be fair, officers depend on overtime too, particularly in the cost of living crisis, where we saw rents increase, mortgages increase, utility bills increase, food increase. All of these considerations go rocketing up. Suddenly, there was far less disposable income. There was far less room and stretch in the family finances, and people do become reliant upon overtime to make ends meet. And this in itself is not a problem for some, but it does eat into the time that you wish to spend with family and friends. And I found that I was spending so much time doing overtime in order to make the extra money I needed to make ends meet and to lead the lifestyle that I wished to live, that I was spending all weekends and several evenings a week doing overtime. And I wanted to go to a job where I'd be paid a decent salary for doing work I enjoyed, but not having to spend so much time doing overtime. And that's one of the things I've done. I've secured employment where the pay is in excess of what a police constable's top rate pay is, and I don't have to work overtime in order to make those ends meet. The weekends and evenings, thankfully, hopefully, will now become my own again. I can't deny that another factor in wanting to leave as well was just the constant degradation in the media, the popular media about policing. Police just seem to be constantly under the cosh in both media, both mainstream and social, for everything that goes wrong. Anything that goes wrong anywhere is always ends up somehow being the police's fault. And whilst I'm sure criticism is sometimes warranted and transparency is necessary, absolutely. By the same token, the last thing you want to hear constantly is just how awful the job you do is, and how terrible the institution is, and how it needs to change, and how that you are responsible for all the ills of the world, and for this and that and anything else. And it does get you down. It got me down to the case where I just didn't want to hear this stuff anymore. I was so sick of hearing in various outlets that everything was the fault of the police in capital letters, and you feel that because you are the face of the police, both to family, friends, to the wider public. I remember being told at the training school, from now on, anytime you hear someone mention the police, they will look at you as the embodiment of that, and that's in it. That is not a bad thing to be the embodiment of something. But when it's all negative all the time, it does get you down, and it's something which, yeah, again, you just don't want to have to constantly feel like you're being under the cosh of the media, who are always wise with hindsight, of any groups which basically always think that you are the very you know epitome of evil, and anyone that's basically got a camera that wants to basically just say how terrible things are. Um, we have the phenomena of the public auditor, which is just a nuisance and a pain and a pest. And these are things which have changed since I first joined over the last few years or so. And these are not public-minded people who wish to make the world better or the world more transparent. These are people who are simply trying to make clickbait in order to make themselves both notorious and relevant. But these all do lead to the erosion of morale, and morale is an essential part of any organisation. And I think police morale, or certainly my morale, has been degraded over the years by exposure to these things. And again, it's not something I really want to have to experience anymore. Police pay and benefits are police pay is usually linked to obviously what they say in the remunerations board, um, they can afford. So last year was good, to be fair. Was it 4.5%, I think they gave last year, which many of us in the office looked up and raised eyebrows and said, gosh, we're genuinely surprised and amazed. But I fear that's probably more the exception than the rule. I fear that police pay will never get much above the level of inflation. I think which is about 2.5%, I think, at the moment. I can never see pay awards ever exceeding those, simply because the governments for successive hues and persuasions will always say that they can't afford it. And also they know that the police officers, the rank and file, have no recourse to demand better pay. You see other services such as the NHS, such as teaching, they have recourses. Governments always happy and sort of are always they always know that there is very little the rank and file of officers can do in order to seek better terms, and I think they're more than happy for that status quo to remain. Um, benefits have only ever decreased. In fact, I can't name. If you ask me a single benefit now that's linked to police pay, I don't think I could tell you of one. I don't think there is any. I know that the pay reflects the time you've spent in, but doesn't reflect the expertise. It doesn't reflect the study. It doesn't reflect the courses and the time that you've spent advancing. I have, for instance, qualifications in fraud investigation, in electoral malpractice, in dealing with banking protocols, qualifications set out by the National Crime Agency, which seek to professionalise and elevate the study of financial crime. And what I get for that in relation to retention is zero, nothing, absolutely net, nothing at all. And the fact that the police doesn't reward or doesn't take look at their officers who have got specialisms and have got qualifications in particularly niche sort of areas of investigation, I think is it's very much a blind spot with them, because if you don't value and if you don't look to retain officers who've got experience and qualifications and sought after skills, they will go and sell those skills elsewhere. It's fundamental. They will take those skills and take them into the private sector where they are respected and they are remunerated for, and they'll do it. So there's always an emphasis on recruitment. Oh, we can always recruit more, but there's never any emphasis on retention, and it's retention that is woefully lacking. The fact that they never do anything to keep the experienced, qualified people that they've got, and until they address that, then forces will continue to hemorrhage experienced officers. Always have a backup plan. Know where you're going to be going and when you're going to do it. Yes, get hold of some relevant skills. Yes, get hold of experience in certain fields like financial management, like cyber security, and earn the stripes, metaphorically speaking, in those areas, and then you go and sell those skills out on the open jobs market. Because policing is not a career for life, which is why, again, why successive governments possibly have wanted it to be. They don't want experienced officers. They don't want people in for the long haul because they become too expensive. They want short-term people in who are cheaper, and that's what they'll get, and they're getting that already. And if that's what they want, then well, more power to them. It's what they've got. But if you're considering joining the job today, always know what you want, know what you're going to go for on the other side, get the skills and qualifications to meet that need, and then take and sell those skills elsewhere. It's the only way that you'll progress.